Imagine this. You wake up in the morning, pick up your phone, and within the first 5 minutes, you see your college friend posting pictures from Paris, your cousin announcing a promotion, and someone you barely know flaunting their new car. And suddenly, without even realizing it, your mood shifts. The day that started with hope now feels a little heavier. You start questioning yourself. What am I even doing with my life? Sound familiar? Well, you're not alone. Millions of people experience this every single day. But here's the twist. The real problem isn't that others are succeeding. The problem is something much deeper, something we've been taught since childhood, and it's disguised as advice. It's called the stay in your lane mindset. Now, on the surface, this phrase sounds harmless, even wise. Focus on yourself. Don't worry about others. Stay in your lane. It sounds like the kind of thing a motivational speaker would say, right? But what if I told you that this mindset, when taken the wrong way, can actually become toxic? What if this very idea is quietly stealing your joy, limiting your growth, and keeping you trapped in a cycle of comparison and self-doubt? That's exactly what we're going to explore today. Because the truth is, comparison isn't just a habit, it's a thief. And it's time we understood how it works, why it hurts, and most importantly, how to stop it from controlling our lives. So let's take a step back and really understand this. Why do we compare ourselves to others in the first place? And how did a simple piece of advice like stay in your lane turn into something that can actually harm us? To answer that, we need to look at how our minds are wired, how society has shaped us, and what happens when we confuse focus with isolation. Because here's the thing. Staying in your lane doesn't mean ignoring the world around you. It doesn't mean shutting yourself off from inspiration or learning from others. But somewhere along the way, we started using it as an excuse to judge ourselves, to feel inferior, and to believe that someone else's success somehow makes us less worthy. And that's where the toxicity begins. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man named Arjun. He was a graphic designer, passionate about his work, decent at what he did, and generally happy with his progress. But then social media happened. Every day, he'd scroll through Instagram and see designers half his age creating jaw-dropping artwork, winning international awards, working with big brands. At first, he felt inspired, but slowly, inspiration turned into intimidation. He started thinking, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should just stick to what I know. Maybe I shouldn't even try for bigger projects because others are already so far ahead. He convinced himself that he should stay in his lane, meaning he should stop dreaming big and just accept his current level. Within months, Arjun stopped experimenting. He stopped learning. He became a shadow of the creative person he once was. Not because he lacked talent, but because comparison had stolen his confidence. Now, Arjun's story isn't unique. It's happening everywhere. In offices, in schools, in homes. We see someone else's highlight reel and compare it to our behind-the-scenes struggle. And this is where psychology comes in. There's a concept called social comparison theory, introduced by psychologist Leon Festinger back in 1954. According to this theory, humans have an innate drive to evaluate themselves, and we do that by comparing ourselves to others. It's not necessarily bad. In fact, comparison can be healthy when it motivates us to grow. But here's the catch. There are two types of comparison. Upward comparison, where we compare ourselves to people we think are better than us, and downward comparison, or we compare ourselves to those we consider worse off. Upward comparison can inspire us, but it can also lead to feelings of inadequacy. Downward comparison might make us feel better temporarily, but it breeds arrogance and false comfort. The real toxicity comes when we start using the stay in your lane mindset as a defense mechanism. When we feel threatened by someone else's success, instead of addressing our insecurities, we tell ourselves, it's okay. I should just focus on my lane. Their success has nothing to do with me. And while that sounds mature, what's actually happening is avoidance. We're avoiding the discomfort of growth. We're avoiding the challenge of stepping outside our comfort zone. We're avoiding the possibility that maybe, just maybe, we're capable of more than we think. The phrase becomes a cage, not a compass. It keeps us small. It keeps us safe. But it also keeps us stuck. Let's talk about another side of this. Social media has amplified this problem in ways we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. Back then, you only compared yourself to people in your immediate circle. Your classmates, your neighbors, maybe a few celebrities on TV. But now you're comparing yourself to millions of people across countries, across industries, across lifestyles, and the worst part, you're comparing your real life to their curated life. You see the vacation, not the debt. You see the promotion, not the sleepless nights. You see the perfect relationship, not the arguments behind closed doors. This constant, unrealistic comparison creates something psychologists call relative deprivation. It's the feeling that you're worse off than others, even if objectively you're doing fine. And this feeling doesn't just make you unhappy. It makes you resentful. It makes you bitter. It makes you believe that joy is something other people have, not something you deserve. But here's what nobody tells you. Comparison doesn't just steal your joy. It also steals your identity. When you're constantly measuring yourself against others, you stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, what do they have that I don't? You stop living your life and start performing for an invisible audience. You make decisions not based on your values, but based on what looks impressive. You chase goals that don't even align with who you are, just because someone else achieved them. And the saddest part, even when you do succeed, it doesn't feel fulfilling. Because it was never your race to begin with. You were running in someone else's lane, pretending it was yours. So what's the solution? How do we break free from this toxic cycle? Well, first, we need to redefine what staying in your lane actually means. It doesn't mean ignoring others. It doesn't mean stopping yourself from dreaming big. It means understanding that everyone's journey is different. Your lane isn't a limitation. It's your unique path. And just because someone else is ahead in their lane doesn't mean you're behind in yours. Maybe they started earlier. Maybe they had different resources. Maybe their destination is completely different from yours. The point is, their mile marker has nothing to do with your progress. You can be inspired by others without being intimidated. You can celebrate their success without diminishing your own. And you can learn from people without feeling less than them. Secondly, we need to practice what's called internal comparison. Instead of comparing yourself to others, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, last month, last year. Are you growing? Are you learning? Are you becoming a better version of yourself? That's the only comparison that matters. Because the truth is, you'll never be them. And they'll never be you. And that's not a flaw. That's the beauty of being human. We're all different. We all have different strengths, different struggles, different timings. And when you accept that, really accept that, comparison loses its power. It stops being a thief and becomes a teacher. It shows you what's possible, not what you're lacking. So let's bring it all together. The stay in your lane mindset becomes toxic when we use it to shrink ourselves, to avoid discomfort, or to justify our fears. It becomes healthy when we use it to honor our unique journey, to focus on our growth, and to stop measuring our worth by someone else's ruler. Comparison will always exist. It's part of being human, but we get to choose how we respond to it. We can let it steal our joy, or we can let it spark our curiosity. We can let it make us feel small, or we can let it remind us that growth is always possible. Remember Arjun, the graphic designer? Well, his story didn't end in that dark place. One day, he realized something. The designers he admired didn't get there by staying small. They experimented, they failed, they learned. And so he decided to stop comparing his chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. He started creating again, not to compete, but to express. Not to impress, but to grow. And slowly his joy returned. Not because he became the best, but because he became himself again. Your lane is not a prison, it's a playground. And the moment you stop looking sideways and start looking forward, everything changes. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling, comparing, doubting, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, am I running my race or am I just watching theirs? Because your joy isn't out there in someone else's success. It's right here in your own journey. Protect it, nurture it, and never, ever let comparison steal it from you. Stay curious, stay kind to yourself, and remember, the only lane that truly matters is the one you're building with your own hands.